How's everybody doing? Good. Good to see a good mix of some marketing and baseball ops people. I think for the baseball ops guys, these four guys should be your best friends, because what do? They drive revenue, right? Which is part of the parallel discussions that we're going to have. I think we've got a dream team panel here, both in terms of intellect as well as diverse roles and responsibilities. And I think more than anything, the intent of this presentation is to really give kind of an insider's perspective into how teams not only are generating revenue today, but as we were even talking about prior to this session, even forecast how we're going to generate revenue over the next 5 to 10 years. And looking back on this session, I think it'll be a foundation, a lot of lessons. My name is Dan Nagala, and I'm as much as anything a student of best practices. So I'm thrilled to be here to be able to moderate this conversation. And I'd like to actually introduce each of our four panelists, have them start out, actually give a little quick overview of their current roles and responsibilities, and then we're going to jump right into some of the questions. I've got certainly enough questions to fill the hour, but once we get going, I really want the group, just like during Bill Nielsen's presentation from Scarborough, to ask questions. This is as much about helping everybody in this room understand the future as it is us talking. So I'll go from my side on down. We've got Zahir Benjamin from the Phoenix Suns. We've got Barry Kahn from QQ. We've got Andrew Miller from the Cleveland Indians, and Dan Darien from Major League Baseball. So Zahir, if you want to introduce yourself, we'll go on down the line, and I'll get started with the questions.
Sure. So, Zahir from the Phoenix Suns. I've been with the Suns for 2 years now. I'm the Senior Director of Financial Planning, and so I have a team of a couple analysts, and we're really responsible for analytics and research across all of our business functions. So from ticket sales and marketing, corporate partnerships, arena operations as well, really just trying to drive the organizations towards more data-driven decision-making and optimize our resource allocation.
So I am Barry Kahn. I am the CEO and founder of QQ, which has been around since 2007, and we work very heavily in Major League Baseball, about 20 clubs right now, as well as across sports teams in the U.S. and abroad on dynamic pricing. So I could actually probably second a lot of the things that Zahir said in terms of trying to helping clients make a shift towards sort of data and analytics, but particularly we focus on ticket pricing.
Andrew Miller from the Cleveland Indians. I oversee strategy and business analytics. I actually started with the Indians in 2006 in baseball operations. I started off working on Major League operations, salary arbitration, player contracts, trades, and then transitioned with Mark Shapiro 2 years ago to oversee strategy and analytics. I'm really focused on a lot of the things that intersect with Barry and Dan and a lot of Zahir's work, but ticket pricing, strategy, organizational goals, a lot of products and innovation.
My name is Dan Darien. I'm the Vice President of Research and Strategic Planning at Major League Baseball. I've been in my role for about the past 10 years. I really have originally a media background, so my original focus when I came over to baseball was really focusing on our broadcast business. But since then, it really evolved into a wide array of areas, understanding who our consumers are and how we can better market the game. My job really falls into the marketing and advertising realm, but we provide research and analytics that services all facets of the league. We work very closely with the clubs as well. Recently developed a ticketing analytics group. Worked very closely with Andrew Miller and some of the folks that are part of the what's called the Commissioner's Ticketing Review Committee. So ticketing has been sort of my focus to a certain degree over the last couple of years, and so that's really where we are today.
Great. Fascinating thing if you stop and think about the positions that they just described. 10 years ago, these roles didn't exist. Which shows you, and even the diverse, we're going to get into the backgrounds of each of these individuals throughout the day, but shows you how quickly, Vince actually said in the opening presentation on day one, if you look back of some of the data that followed in the baseball ops in 2003, only 97% of it is new in the last 10 years. And I think we're still seeing that catch up on the business side, which makes these four guys really at the forefront. Obviously, historically speaking, in all sports, the heartbeat of revenue income is really around the ticket holder, and in particularly season ticket holder driving the value of the ticket. And I think if we can really dive in first on the ticketing side and get into a number of other subjects, obviously dynamic pricing, variable pricing. I mean, these are all phrases that are commonplace in a team marketplace now. And Barry, I think you're obviously at the forefront of this. And I think before we really dive in, it's important to really define what that is, for all of us in the room, and maybe even clarify the difference between dynamic and variable.
Sure. So for years now, teams have been doing kind of what's called variable pricing, which is having different prices for different games during the season. So, in a baseball context, if the Yankees or Red Sox, which are two high-demand teams, are coming in, prices will be higher for those games. Dynamic pricing has really taken that to the next level and said, not just are we going to have different prices for different games, but prices are going to change over time. And there's a lot of reasons that prices will change over time, and I think teams have a range of kind of dynamic pricing from, on one extreme, what I would consider to be something that's more flexible variable pricing, where you might change a tier from a B game to an A game depending on demand, to something that looks a lot more like what the Indians have been rolling out this year, where price is really moving over time for a reason. And that's to move people around different areas of the ballpark and try to make sure that they fill up in areas first, whether that's for TV angles, whether that's for a better fan experience, and then also capture some of this change in the value of game over time. So again, dynamic pricing, it's not just prices moving over time, but it's really having a clear strategy on why that's going to happen.
Yeah, Andrew, I'd love it, if you chime into that. I mean, as far as specifically, how you're taking that and what we're going to see this year at Progressive Field as it relates to that.
Sure. I mean, just to start with the background on dynamic pricing, this is the first year we've fully dynamically priced our ballpark. Last year we started in a test scenario, and in the second half rolled out dynamic pricing across every game. I mean, from a real basic standpoint, we've been variably pricing for a number of years, and when you think about what it actually takes to price tickets, there's a lot of inefficiencies built in, even if you're the best pricing team possible. We actually set our season ticket pricing in June or July of the preceding year. So for any team where team performance or off-season spending or market factors such as economic situations changed during a 6 to 9 month period, which those things have happened in Cleveland, you're opening the season with already inefficiently priced tickets. So what dynamic pricing allows us to do is set a baseline for those season ticket pricing relatively early, but then change it over time as market factors change.
Right, and Dan, from your perspective, when you hear that, obviously that's an isolated example in Cleveland, but obviously you've got responsibilities to all the clubs and using all this information. From a league perspective, how do you internalize what the Indians are doing and help supply all that information, to help all the other clubs?
Sure. So, what we do, where I sit, and as part of the committee that I described, is sort of evaluate, understand what's going on throughout the league, identify best practices, and business results that are being seen by our clubs. I think, to Barry's point, the evolution of this has happened pretty rapidly. I guess with the Giants being the first club in 2009 or 10, 2010.
Yeah, 2010 was the first full season.
So then in 2011, I think we had 7 or 8 clubs that are dynamically pricing, and then in 12, we had more than 2/3 of clubs implementing the practice in some fashion. I think 22 clubs. So clearly, it's a practice that we want to see value in. I think there's sort of we all agree, and I think as Andrew said, when you set prices the previous summer, the one thing you're certain of is getting those prices wrong relative to what they ought to be when those games are played. And so, clubs are implementing a variety of different styles of dynamic pricing. I think, the majority of them now are dynamically pricing the entire ballpark. But there are other strategies within dynamic pricing, whether it's sort of a buy early and save mentality that they're trying to instill in fans. So, to get the, move as much inventory up front as possible. Fans that buy tickets early will pay less than those who pay closer to when the game is played. There's the price flattening strategy that we were talking about a little while ago. So sort of narrowing the gap between what cheap and better seats are priced at, so that we can migrate fans into those better seats, have them pay a little bit more, have perhaps a better experience. The other reasons like Barry cited. So again, I think there's a lot of different styles of implementing the practice. The ways that our fans have educated, our clubs have educated their fans is also certainly an important component of it. But fair to say it is a widespread practice, and I think we've surveyed clubs recently as to what they plan to do in 2013, and very few are dialing back in their implementation of the practice, and in fact most are sort of pushing forward and implementing it in a more widespread fashion.
Yeah, I'm going to come back on the for a deeper dive into the flat pricing discussion too. I think it's really fascinating stuff, but I want to get to Zahir representing the NBA here. But certainly from a business perspective, same universal challenges. From a stance of utilizing data, utilizing analysis, and you and I chatted a little bit before, even via email, on the season ticket holder in particular, and I thought give a quick overview of how you're using data, really in identifying renewal targets too.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the pricing is one big area. I think better understanding customer behavior is, of course, another crucial challenge for us. And one of the things I was chatting with Dan about is one of the things we focused on and really just rolled out this year is really trying to understand more about our season ticket holders and their likelihood to renew for the next season. I mean, that's such an important part of our business. We really try to model that as well as we can, understand what are the drivers of likelihood to renew. I think that helps us in a lot of different ways. I mean, what we've found is that some of the things that may sound intuitive, but we're able to quantify is it's probably the biggest driver is actual attendance, right? So if our members, our season ticket holders are not attending, then they're unlikely to renew, right? But another sort of really interesting finding is that if folks are not able to attend the games, but if they're able to actually post their tickets for resale and actually successfully resell, that's an important sort of predictor of renewal propensity. So, I mean, that gives us sort of a good lever where we can, if we have a season ticket holder that we notice is not attending games and for whatever reason is not attending and is also not posting their tickets for resale, that's an area where our sales representatives can sort of step in and sort of interact and understand. Maybe they need coaching in terms of how to post their tickets. So really try to be proactive in understanding what's the driver of renewal and can we sort of step in to affect the customer behavior.
Yeah, Zahir used a word there, as part of that great overview, the word member. And I think it's a word that's popping up a lot more in these conversations. And much more beyond deeper engagement, deeper relationship than just a season ticket holder, which we all know is the lifeline of every organization. But Dan, I know you and I exchanged before this panel. A lot more teams are looking at a membership model. Curious from your perspective of not only what we're going to see over the next 5 years in terms of a member model, but how to Zahir's comments of how those predictors are driving some of these conversations and strategies.
Sure. So, that is, again, a practice that's taking root. Membership and loyalty programs among our clubs. I think 7 or 8 clubs, I think, will be implementing some form of a membership or loyalty program this year, the Indians among them. And really, it's aimed at providing value to our season ticket holders, differentiating in some ways the primary market from the secondary market, learning perhaps most importantly, learning more about who our customers are, how they're utilizing their tickets, how they're when they're coming to the ballpark, what they're doing and purchasing within the ballpark, availing us of really important data that allows us to then go back and market out to them sort of on a one-to-one basis based on what they sort of want out of the experience. So again, I think looking to drive renewals, engage our fans, and really provide value that differentiates being a season ticket holder is really sort of at the heart of what the membership and loyalty programs are all about. Clubs are utilizing them or constructing these programs in different ways. I know the San Diego Padres is an example that's creating sort of a year-round membership program, almost like a country club type of environment where they're segmenting their fan base, identifying different segments that want different sort of relationships with the brand, and providing them with the opportunities to experience some of those things, whether it's at the ballpark or outside the ballpark, that again really bring unique value to being a season seat holder. So again, I think it's another way that we're looking to drive revenue as it relates to the relationship we have with ticket holders.
And Andrew, from your perspective, directly at the team, from a membership strategy, curious talking about the genesis of that idea, and then actually I think a lot of what we're talking about, and maybe we'll dive into the story within the story, is actually taking that desire to do something and actually acting on it. And the whole thought of progress and innovative thinking and actually applying it.
Yeah. Whether you call somebody a season ticket holder or a member or something else, our goal is to retain them year after year. They're a recurring source of revenue for us. So, what Dan described or what Zahir described in terms of their work, our goal is to find ways that people will continue to come back to us on a recurring basis. So in the past, and most teams do something like this, we gave our fans, our season ticket holders, benefits. And it was a one-size-fits-all approach, and they all got a night in a suite and a few seats in a club section or something like that, discount on merchandise. And everyone got the same thing. And it wasn't differentiated based on tenure with a club or spending or any behaviors that we actually wanted to encourage from our fans. So we rolled out a loyalty program called Tribe Rewards this year. It's not that different from if you think of your airline mileage, clubs or casino clubs or something like that, where we actually provide points to fans based on those benefits. Could be the same things they were buying in the past, suites and club seats and things like that, or it could be unique experiences, autographed memorabilia, and other items.
And if you can, the process internally, I think a lot of people in this room that are on teams or eventually going to work for teams, the idea process to actual implementation, a lot of what we talked on the baseball side, of this seminar and this conference has been, the internal change. And obviously, that's a fundamental, let's call it an evolution, maybe more than a shift.
Yeah.
Any lessons learned from that process?
We've been researching loyalty programs for 2 to 3 years and trying to find the right method that would work well for us. When we started rolling it out last summer, the goal was to have it implemented in line with our season ticket renewal invoices in August or September. So we were really launching it internally May, June, July timeframe. And people generally understood it, and it was more, how is this going to change how I have to interact with the people I'm speaking to every day. I think actually Bill James said it yesterday, the ticket sales people are on the front lines. They're the ones talking to the fans every single day. And when we make a change, they're the ones that are going to hear it from the people they've been talking to for 20 years. So their mindset is, what is this going to mean for those conversations? So we certainly tried to implement them with helpful information and talking points and things of that nature. But it was a change, and when it got rolled out, there was a lot of questions from fans of what does it mean and how do I actually get the things I want.
Yeah, and I mentioned, and there's the internal change and the external change as well. Barry, obviously going back to really helping the Giants and really revolutionizing the way that ticket pricing is done. Internal and external, communications, lessons learned, and maybe some thoughts to share on both of those.
Yeah, sure. So we started out before we really did anything was talk to the fans. So we did a really comprehensive survey of season ticket holders, trying to understand kind of what their pain points were, what their concern would be about changing something that they'd grown very used to, which was having set ticket prices. And once we were able to kind of understand kind of the concerns and the reaction in the market we got there, we were able to kind of position it in a way that we knew would be received favorably. So we put things in place like floors at the season ticket price because we knew that was a big pain point for the fan. For the season ticket holder was feeling like someone got a better deal from an individual ticket sale. And so we eliminated that. We worked on our messaging to kind of point to where there was value for fans. And we actually realized that there was an entirely different set of concerns for a season ticket holder versus an individual fan. Right, an individual fan would be perfectly happy finding out that there was a discounted ticket way better than a season ticket holder was ever going to save, but the season ticket holder wasn't going to be happy about that. So we kind of broke up the messaging to highlight to the individual fans where they could get good deals and why this was value to them, while at the same time for the season ticket holder highlighting how this wasn't going to change their value proposition. And to be fair, things that Dan and Andrew just been talking about, like a rewards program or loyalty programs, I think are actually going to help that going forward because I think it's good to position it to a season ticket holder that their value isn't just sort of a financial discount. But anyway, so we really kind of took all these steps and really figured out the strategy prior to announcing it. And then now we work with all of our clubs when they come on board to make sure that we kind of hand them the lines that they need to feed to the media, understand how we have to put the program in place to make sure that we're taking care of the fans going forward. And that's a really big part of a rollout across the board.
Yeah, and I mean, that's obviously part of it. I think people are probably more, safe to say, more aware from a consumer standpoint now than 3 years ago, too.
Yeah, no, I think they're much more aware now. Major League Baseball has done a lot in terms of actually displaying pricing for all teams across the board. I think that's something that again, wasn't in place before, where you could actually go for a team and see what prices were for every game. So, now this is in place. We do have some teams that roll it out without making a big announcement. I think each market is still its own universe, and in some ways kind of needs its own messaging, and you need to educate your fans there. But now that it's known, you're right, it's not the same deal that it was for the first game.
Yeah, and Zahir, obviously, NBA, roughly half the amount of games, but still the same challenges, right?
Yeah, no, I think in terms of dynamic pricing, we see it as a pretty critical lever in our business. We've been dynamically pricing our games for 3 years now. I think at least half the NBA teams do that. But just to echo some of the comments from Dan and Andrew as well, I think there's still a lot that we have to learn about. What's the best strategy? How can we? I think what's most interesting is how can we sort of influence our customer behavior based on how we sort of communicate our dynamic pricing strategy and how we sort of implement it in the market. So whether that's driving fans to specific areas of the stadium, whether that's encouraging sort of early purchase behavior, I think there's still a lot we can do, a lot of testing and optimization there. But it's really a critical part of our strategy.